Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is former Congressman Charlie Dent, a chair of our Republican legacy. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, great to be with you, Brittany.
As the government shutdown drags on through its 41st day, it does finally seem like there's an end in sight. 8 senators with the Democratic caucus voted with Republicans to fund the government. The deal they agreed to, though, won't offer any guarantees when it comes to health care, which has been the real sticking point for Democrats and the reason they kept the government shut down for these over 40 days. But what they did agree to was a vote next month on extending the enhanced ACA subsidies. So to start off the conversation, what are your thoughts here on the shutdown situation and the path to get out of it?
Well, this shutdown, like all shutdowns, are pointless. The party that is making the policy demand, in this case, if the Democrats did not get a health care premium subsidies, they were going to shut down the government. Just like the Republicans did in 2013, if they didn't defund Obamacare, they'd shut down the government. Well, the party making the policy demand usually never gets what they want during the shutdown. And that's what's going to happen here again. It appears Senate Democrats have pretty much agreed to what Senator Thune proposed several weeks ago now, to essentially reopen the government, then have a vote on a date certain on the premium subsidies. And that's going to happen. I don't know what the outcome will be, but it's interesting because, obviously many Democratic voters probably feel very betrayed and angered. They shouldn't be. Everybody kind of expected this. At least I certainly expected this outcome. But what's interesting, though, is that the vote on the premium subsidies for the ACA will be a very difficult issue in the House. Mike Johnson will come under real pressure from his right wing, of which there are many, who will object to any consideration of any vote on the ACA premium subsidies. And he'll have also a lot of pressure from his members in swing districts, the majority makers, the ones who are at risk at losing in November next year. They will insist on having a vote, many of them, because they want to be able to vote for those premium subsidies. So I'm interested to watch the dynamics in the House. It's unclear what will happen in the Senate when they have the vote. I don't know what the outcome will be. But Democrats, I get the sense, look, if this premium subsidy vote succeeds, well, then the Democrats win. If the vote fails, I would argue the Democrats still win, because then they will have a very powerful campaign issue to bludgeon Republicans with in the 2026 midterm, just as they did to Republicans in the 2018 midterm when they bludgeoned Republicans over then the health care bill, the ACA repeal replace initiative that failed.
To that point, last week, Democrats won big on affordability. Healthcare is a big component of that. How do you want to see Republicans deal with healthcare costs, especially when it comes to this vote? Because every Republican I've talked to agrees that healthcare costs are too high in this country. However, none that I've talked to like Obamacare. So what's the solution?
Well, that's the big question. What is the solution? Right now, I know Republicans are now throwing out proposals at this late hour. I suspect they will need to negotiate something on the cost of healthcare. Republicans aren't wrong when they say since Obamacare, healthcare costs have soared. They have. The problem is I haven't seen a whole lot of policy proposals to talk about lowering the cost of healthcare, at least nothing that's been taken on seriously. And so the Democrats' answer is, well, let's just simply provide greater subsidies to those who are currently in the ACA marketplace. Okay. Well, that's a way to lower the cost, to the consumer who's got to buy the premium, buy the policy, but it really doesn't address the underlying cost increases. So right now, Republicans, I don't think have a well thought out plan on healthcare. So in the meantime, I suspect they will need to extend the current premium subsidies for the ACA, perhaps with some income eligibility limits and some other modifications, until they actually come up with a real plan. And then they're going to have to negotiate that with the Democrats, and that could take a very long time if it ever happens at all.
And do you think that lack of a health care plan is going to cost them in the midterms next year?
Well, what will cost them in the midterms next year will be if these premiums spike up without any support through these subsidies. Healthcare will be a big issue in the midterm election, regardless, because of the one big beautiful bill, the so-called one big beautiful bill, that did change Medicaid eligibility for many people, and a lot of folks will lose their Medicaid coverage. So that will be a powerful issue that Democrats will bludgeon Republicans with. But if the rates go up and all those people who are not in Medicaid and the ACA exchanges, well, then that's just a double whammy that Democrats will be able to use against Republicans. So yeah, healthcare is going to be a big issue.
And both senators from our state of Pennsylvania voted consistently to fund the government. John Fetterman, he's a Democrat. He defected from his party. He voted for that each time. Philly Magazine's headline for this was Fetterman Folds. And Fetterman, in his statement explaining his vote, he apologized to the military, to SNAP recipients, to government workers, to the Capitol Police. He calls the government shutdown a failure. He's defending his vote. His party has been pretty consistently criticizing him. Governor Gavin Newsom called what happened pathetic. There has been constant hammering from Democrats in the House. What do you make of Fetterman's vote?
Well, I think he put up the right vote. I mean, back in 2013, I was one of the Republicans pushing back against my party that shut the government down over defunding Obamacare, a tactic that could never have been successful. And even many of those guys admitted at the time, they just wanted to have a fight. And I voted for a clean bill to reopen the government, and some called me a traitor. I didn't much care. A whole lot of us voted to reopen the government because we knew the whole thing was ridiculous, just as it is the case now. I mean, I get that the issue of the ACA premiums is an important issue, but there was never any way that the Democrats were going to be able to get that policy victory in the middle of a shutdown. And then now that they're pretending that they're shocked that there are consequences to a shutdown, that people are having trouble traveling. And yes, SNAP beneficiaries were losing their benefits. Yes, did the White House use their position to add even more pressure? Absolutely. I wish they hadn't done that, but they've done that. And now some of the Democrats are voting to open the government. I think they should be applauded for it, not condemned. Just as Schumer voted for it back in the spring, he made the right call back then, and changed his position going into this shutdown. But they have to reopen the government. They all know it. It's like they're worried about their base. They're all worried about primaries. This is just like the Republicans were worried about in 2013. Republicans were looking over their right shoulder, worried about primary challenges, knowing that what was happening was a mistake. I think many Democrats right now probably also recognize they're more worried about the primary pressure, the base wanting this fight, and they knew that they were going to have to open this anyway. So, I give Fetterman and everybody else and the other Democrats who voted for this credit for doing what they needed to do.
And Pennsylvania is an interesting state. It's a swing state, voted for Trump in 2024, had some wins last week, which we'll get into for Democrats. Fetterman's up for re-election in 2028. He's also defected from his party on other issues before. Do you think that this impacts his re-election chances at all? Because we're not seeing that for 3 years, but what do you think?
Well, I notice he's not raising much money. I'm starting to wonder whether he's going to run for re-election at all. I just haven't seen a lot of fundraising efforts there. Yes, he is. He is. I've seen polling numbers for him that suggest that he was upside down among Democratic voters, which is a bad sign. That he's really ripe for a primary challenge, and that his support among Republicans was pretty good, but I would call that soft support. And so I think he's in a bit of a no man's land politically at the moment, and so I'd be a little surprised if he ran again, just based on his fundraising numbers and his polling numbers right now.
And as a Republican, I'm curious what your thoughts are on last week's election results. Good day for Democrats, bad day for Republicans. However, a lot of the wins, the bigger wins rather, were in blue or blue-leaning states. Pennsylvania did see a win with the Supreme Court justices getting their term extended for another 10 years. Georgia saw a win down the ballot. But what do you make of what we saw on Tuesday?
Well, by any measure, Democrats had a fantastic night. I'm not just talking about in New Jersey and in Virginia and in New York City and on the California Prop 50 vote. Yeah, they did great in all those elections. But I'm looking at data in a more granular way. I was just looking in Pennsylvania, and beyond, we had the retention of 3 Supreme Court judges, and the Democrats won those, I think, by a margin of about 60-40, which is a huge win. So that was a sign. But even more importantly, when I'm looking at county data, like one of the counties I represented, Northampton County, one of the key swing counties of not only Pennsylvania, but the country. Same with Bucks County, immediately to my south. Also another key swing county in Pennsylvania, and also one that everybody watches nationally. Those counties, Democrats just ran the tables. I wasn't shocked by their victories. I was shocked by their margins of victory. Their margins were stunning. What I've learned, and I think every Republican who's running for office in 2026 better make note of this, is that in these off-year elections, Democrats have a much more reliable voter base. That was not always the case. When I first was in politics, for most of my time, Republicans had that more reliable voter base in off-year and even midterm elections. That has changed. That has changed completely, because remember who the Republican base is now. The base is now composed more of people without college degrees, and and Democrats have many more people with college degrees and higher incomes, and that demographic tends to vote more reliably. That demographic, by the way, used to be much more Republican oriented, but in the era of Trump, that we've seen a massive realignment. And so now I think Republican voters have to realize that they're going into the midterm at a huge disadvantage in terms of they have more lower propensity voters, and two, this is a midterm election. Party of the president almost always takes it on the chin, and it appears Republicans are going to be running into very heavy wins. And if they're as heavy as they were last Tuesday, it could be a really bad night in November of 26.
And Democrats said that this was a referendum on Trump. President Trump doesn't think it's a referendum on him. He said, hey, I wasn't on the ballot. This was about the shutdown. People were blaming Republicans. I mean, what do you think it was? And then how do Republicans course correct in the next year?
Well, Donald Trump was on the ballot. Yes, his name was not on the ballot, but believe me, these people were coming out voting on him. It was, in fact, a referendum on Donald Trump's stewardship of the economy and his conduct in office. More than anything else. I mean, we can, try to dance around that issue, but Democratic voters were motivated, they were energized, and they were angry, and they turned out. And how else does one explain, why various incumbent Republicans in many counties in Pennsylvania, and I'll say some of these swing counties, lost their elections? They lost by big margins. Not because they did anything wrong. They weren't necessarily real MAGA people in many cases, just normal Republicans, and they lost. How do we explain it? How do we explain the loss of those Georgia, I think, utility commissioner seats that I don't think they've ever lost them, or at least not in modern times. How did they lose them? I mean, it was clearly a national. There was some kind of a national energy or movement that Democrats are just simply voting against Republicans to punish them because of Donald Trump. I don't know if there's any other explanation, but that's it.
Do you think then, because I know you're not a MAGA Republican, do you think then that that's enough for the party to move on from MAGA, or are we not even close to that?
Well, we've seen this before. Remember, in the 2017 election, after Donald Trump was elected, Republicans also had a bad night. Not as bad as last Tuesday, but it was still a pretty bad night. And Republicans had really, frankly, bad years. Each year that Trump was not on the ballot. In 17, a bad night. 2018, lost the House majority. And then in 2020, we lost the Senate. Trump was on the ballot, although other Republicans did reasonably better, frankly. It could have been worse. But in 2022, Republicans lost the House. And 2023, again, not a great year either. So I just think that, right now, I think when Trump's not on the ballot, Republicans tend not to do very well in their elections. Trump does bring out a lot of voters. That is true. He certainly did in 2024 and surprised a lot of people. 2020, he brought out a lot of people as well, but not enough, and lost. And certainly in 2016 he did. But in all these other election years, Republicans have really struggled. And
President Trump's never going to be on the ballot in name again in 2026, 2028, and onward. So where do you want to see the Republican Party go then?
Well, the Republican Party is going to need to pivot. I think voters are telling, American voters are telling Republicans that they want a different direction. Yeah, of course, a lot of Democrats don't like where the party is and may never like where it is. But I do think the party needs to move away some of these economically self-destructive measures like these tariffs that are being broadly and indiscriminately applied, and that they're inflationary, and they're harming American consumers. They're harming American manufacturers. They're harming American farmers. And people are noticing. So, I mean, that's just one very specific issue where I think the party needs to find some of its free market roots again and talk about, America on the ascent, that America can compete in this world, that we should be opening markets for our producers rather than shutting down markets for our producers. It's what we're doing. That's what we've done. We're harming ourselves. And so that's just one very specific example. And other things that I think that the party wants to move beyond too. I mean, these never-ending bad visuals. I mean, how many Americans actually care about this big ballroom? I mean, they're never going to go to the ballroom. They're worried about their own pocketbooks. And the president is showing pictures of marble bathrooms and gilding the White House, tearing down the East Wing and building a big party room that most of them will never ever go to in their lives. It's not relevant to what they're about. We need to speak to these voters about what they care about issues that they care about, particularly on the economy, but also other issues like supporting Ukraine and standing with allies. I think people are a lot of Republicans are going to get tired of losing, and they're going to get tired of all this chaos. And again, these very bad visuals and pardoning these people willy-nilly. We believe in the rule of law. Pardoning all these January 6th criminals. He just pardoned this cryptocurrency guy who was very tied to his sons, and then on 60 Minutes said, "Oh boy, I don't know how that happened. He didn't know the guy." Well, who signed the damn pardon then? I mean, if it's was it the auto pen? I mean, but these are the kinds of things that cumulatively, they're having an impact. People say Donald Trump is Teflon. Well, if he was Teflon, it sure didn't reflect on any of the Republican Party candidates last week. They took it on the chin. So there are problems out there right now.
And then my last question to you, arguably Republicans won the affordability issue in 2024. Democrats won it last week in 2025. How do Republicans reclaim that for 2026?
Well, maybe start talking about issues like, maybe like right now, I would tell Republicans, get bills on the floor to repeal many of Donald Trump's tariffs before the Supreme Court does it for them. I would reassert themselves to show that they are hearing the American people on the costs that they are, costs of items that they're paying every day. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I just saw that the president put out a proposal to give every American a $2,000 rebate from the tariffs. So why not just don't impose all these tariffs? Don't tax them and then give them back a $2,000 check. I mean, it's just don't take the money from them in the first place. So I think Republicans have opportunities to talk about the economy in ways that that would, I think, resonate with the American people. But again, when the president is talking about golden shares and Nippon U.S. Steel and taking 10% interests in Intel, I don't know that a lot of Americans and Republican voters too are going to be that crazy about that kind of economic stewardship. Do we really want the federal government so involved in these businesses to the extent that the president is inserting himself? And so I think Republicans might want to come back to something more traditional in that sense. I get it, the party's never going to go back to where it was. But there are some things that certain principles we should abide by, particularly when it comes to opening markets and keeping a lighter regulatory taxes. And again, tariffs are taxes. So I mean, that's where we should start. And I think the party would be well served if it reclaimed some of its longstanding principles.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining me. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Brittany. Always good to be with you.